Turns out, Moroccan milk. Kids in Morocco are caught between two opposite problems at the exact same time, and nobody's really talking about it. One child could be too short because they're malnourished, while their classmate sitting 3 desks over is overweight for the same basic reason: not enough of the right food. That's the double bind researchers just documented in northwestern Morocco, and it raises a genuinely unsettling question. What if the food we think solves malnutrition is actually making things worse? Morocco, like dozens of countries right now, is in the middle of something called a nutritional transition. It's not gradual. It's violent and contradictory. The country is getting wealthier, which means more food, which sounds good until you realize it means different food. Milk is everywhere now. Milk is cheap. Milk is supposed to be healthy. But when researchers actually looked at what Moroccan schoolchildren were drinking and eating, and then measured their bodies, they found something that doesn't fit the narrative we've been sold for 50 years. A team of researchers at Ibn Tufayl University in Nutr, Morocco, decided to find out exactly what was happening. Hicham Attaf led the work alongside Dina Ayyad, Fatima Zahra Yassif, and colleagues across 2 universities in northwestern Morocco. This study came out in June of 2026 as part of the Supreme Milk Project, a big international effort to understand how dairy actually affects kids in low and middle income countries. These weren't casual scientists. They spent months designing this, collecting data, and fighting through the complexity of what they found. Between January and June of 2025, researchers recruited 248 schoolchildren aged 7 to 14 from public primary schools in both urban and peri-urban areas around Nutr. This is important. They didn't just pick one town or one neighborhood. They split the sample deliberately between city kids and kids living on the outskirts, because where you live changes everything about what you eat. Researchers asked every single child about their dairy consumption using something called a food frequency questionnaire. Think of it like a detailed conversation where you ask someone not just what they ate yesterday, but what they actually eat most weeks. Then they measured the kids. Height, weight, waist circumference, waist to height ratio. Everything you'd need to determine if a kid is growing normally, growing too slowly, or carrying extra weight they probably shouldn't be. The first finding was straightforward. Liquid milk dominated. 33.9% of children reported high milk consumption. Another 56.5% reported moderate consumption. That's 90% of Moroccan schoolchildren drinking milk regularly. That's a massive shift from even 10 years ago. But here's where it gets interesting. Traditional dairy products, things like El-Ben, which is buttermilk, and J-Ben, which is fresh cheese, were consumed way less frequently. The old foods were being replaced by new ones, and that's where the nutritional disaster started showing up. When researchers actually measured the kids, they found the double burden of malnutrition playing out in real bodies. Some children showed stunting. They were too short for their age, the classic sign of chronic malnutrition. Others showed overweight or early obesity. Both problems were present simultaneously in the same population. And the data wasn't subtle. Among children in peri-urban areas specifically, higher milk consumption didn't correlate with better height. It also didn't correlate with worse height. It correlated with weight gain. Kids drinking more milk were gaining fat, not growing taller. That's the opposite of what we're told milk does. Milk is supposed to trigger IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, which is literally the hormone that makes kids grow longer bones. But in this population, something else was happening. The milk was making them heavier, not taller. The urban-peri-urban divide mattered too. Kids living in cities showed different patterns than kids on the outskirts, which suggests that where you live, which affects whether you can afford varied food, whether you have access to exercise, whether you're stressed, changes how your body responds to the same dairy consumption. Socioeconomic factors weren't just background noise, they were driving the whole picture. Kids from wealthier families showed different nutritional patterns than kids from poorer families, even when they were drinking the same amount of milk. This matters for one specific reason. Milk became a policy solution before anyone verified it would actually work. Governments and health organizations have been pushing dairy for years in low and middle-income countries based on the assumption that more dairy equals better growth and better health. That assumption is not obviously wrong. Dairy is nutrient-dense. It contains protein, calcium, riboflavin, all things growing bodies need. But this study suggests that assumption breaks down in specific contexts. When a child's overall diet is poor and calorie-restricted, adding milk might help. When milk is plentiful, but other fresh foods are scarce, milk might just add empty calories in the form of fat. The effect of food doesn't happen in a vacuum. It depends on everything else the person is eating, their activity level, their stress, and their genetics. One limitation worth flagging: this was a cross-sectional study, which means researchers captured a moment in time. They didn't follow kids forward to see if high milk consumption at age 9 predicted problems at age 13. They also couldn't prove causation. Maybe kids who were already on track to become overweight consumed more milk for other reasons. Maybe their parents had more money, and wealthy parents buy more milk. You can't untangle those threads from a snapshot. The researchers were careful about this. They didn't overclaim. What this study actually sits inside of is a much bigger reckoning with nutrition science. For decades, we've treated food policy like it's universal. One food is good, one food is bad. Eat more eggs, you get better. But actual human bodies live in actual specific contexts. A child in rural Morocco eating mostly grains and occasional vegetables might benefit enormously from adding dairy. A child in urban Morocco eating ultra-processed snacks and drinking sugary beverages might be harmed by adding more calories in the form of whole milk. The same food has different effects depending on everything surrounding it. That's not complicated in theory. It's just complicated to actually measure and account for. Until now, we haven't bothered. We've just pushed dairy and assumed it would work everywhere. This study is part of a wave of research that's finally asking, on whom? In what context? Under what conditions? The single most important thing here is this. The foods we push on vulnerable populations because we think they're healthy sometimes aren't. Not in the way we thought. Not for everyone. Not everywhere. That's unsettling because it means there's no simple solution hiding in a food. There's only context, variation, and the possibility that we've been wrong at scale. So here's the question that should keep you thinking. If the food we've been using to fix malnutrition is making some kids fatter instead of taller, what else have we gotten backwards? Turns out, scientists have been busy, and they're not done yet.